Chair of Suicide Prevention Ottawa, Ben Leikin, to take it from here. Take it away, Ben.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Andrea, just a thumbs up if you can hear me.
I can hear you, yes.
Awesome. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, and welcome everybody. So happy that you could be here with us today. Before we start, I would like to begin by honoring the peoples of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation who have lived on this territory for millennia. Ottawa is built on unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. We honor the peoples and land of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation, as well as all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, their elders, their ancestors, and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. I'd like to introduce myself as well. My name is Benjamin Leikin. I'm one of the co-chairs of Suicide Prevention Ottawa. I'm also the program manager of mental health, addictions, and substance use health at Ottawa Public Health. Alongside me and with me today, who will be one of the moderators as well, is Tim Simboli. Tim is the executive director of the Canadian Mental Health Association here in Ottawa. He's a longtime leader in the suicide prevention community, the mental health community, housing community, and much more, and social services here. We've also been said by many to be twins or doppelgangers, which I think is a compliment to me or a diss to Tim, I'm not sure. And I hope it's because we're both caring and kind. It also could be because we're both white and old and bald, me included now. I told you, Tim, if I introduce you, you'd be in trouble.
I wasn't expecting that, Ben. Thanks for that.
No problem. Anytime. It's nice to smile and laugh. I hope it's because we're kind and caring and maybe funny too. So we're here today, not to diss Tim anymore, but to talk about a really important topic and subject, which is suicide prevention. And we're here on behalf of Suicide Prevention Ottawa, which is a community of partners made up to work together to prevent suicide, to support people after death by suicide, and to promote wellness. And we're here to mark World Suicide Prevention Day. This year's theme is creating hope through action, and our event aims to do that by giving people the confidence to take action after a tragic event. We also hope to engage our community to go further into a response, something we've been seeing a lot over the last few years is how do we better respond after tragic events in our community. So today we hope to contribute to the creation of hope by sharing proven means that can reduce deaths by suicide and other tragic events. We hope to create hope by getting the word out that preventing suicide is absolutely possible, and creating hope by thinking about how and what else could we do to enhance our responses to tragic and traumatic events in our communities. It gives me great hope to see so many people here today, to hear that we reached 100+, and we're also live streaming. You all play such a key important role and a meaningful role in helping create and maintain healthy and strong community. So genuinely, thank you for being here. And I really hope we can continue this conversation with many, many, many of you after today. So our theme today is postvention, recognizing that postvention is a key part of prevention. If we can support people to restore balance after a traumatic event, after a suicide, we can prevent the potential of further harms, suicide, and other tragic consequences and outcomes. Postvention is a way to signal to people that they belong in the community. It's a way to help people get connected to supports, and it's a way of telling people that they matter, because everyone matters, and we need to do better to support each other after these events. So I'll pass it now to my doppelganger, Tim. Tim, over to you.
Thanks very much. If I knew we were going to be that alike, I could have just let you do the whole thing, Ben. But this is a serious topic and a serious discussion today, all kidding aside. I think the notion that suicides can happen anywhere, anytime, relatively unpredicted, and that they require a concerted effort and a coordinated effort for the community. And one of the reasons that Ottawa is in the position it's in is because there have been a lot of people that have come together over the years to look at how things unfold and to pool resources and to bring people together. And it really has transcended a lot of organizational boundaries and it really is a service-oriented discussion that happens. What's the best thing to do? And it's been a great conversation to see unfold over the last 40 or so years. And some of the people on the call today have actually been in that conversation from the beginning. And I think if we, for today's discussion, I think if we look at suicide as a community tragedy, something that's shared by a lot of people, and a tragedy that kind of ripples both outward across social networks, but also kind of across time. If we see it as, there are precursors and prevention things that we can do, and there are things that we can do to help the families and the loved ones who lose someone to a death by suicide, and how we can help communities beyond that, and how we can strengthen the resilience of communities just in general. So it becomes something that I imagine as kind of ripples in a pond. And I think what we've done over the last 40 years is we've organized folks to be able to respond to various aspects of that. And Ottawa is blessed with a very strong prevention capacity, identification, prevention, ways to address it. And I think we've got responses that can help kind of immediately. And we've got responses like our Postvention team. And CMHA has the privilege of kind of helping to coordinate that. And you'll hear a little bit more from Helen and Nikki shortly about the kind of work that we do. But again, it's a community response that happens in the most generous of terms, and it brings together folks who are trauma informed and grief informed and critical incident debriefing informed, and brings teams together to kind of help respond when that community gets hit, when the first ripples and the impact starts to hit home. We actually have a group of people that we call together kind of randomly to come in and respond, and it happens by request. It happens sometimes just because somebody sees it happening and kind of triggers a set of responses where this community comes together. And I think what Ben alluded to it earlier is that the postvention response and the skills that we've developed around that and the practices that we've developed actually share an awful lot with other responses to tragic deaths or tragic losses or huge losses. And I think back to some of the tragedies that we've had in Ottawa that have literally touched almost everybody in a city of 1 million people. And we've also had deaths by misadventure, deaths by opioid overdose. We've had serious crises that may not have ended in a death, but have come very close to that, or have had this really profound effect on the people around them. And one of the things we want to talk about today is not to take the emphasis off the day being suicide prevention, but to look at other ways that the community can come together and to use that capacity that we've developed. And so I think as we go through this conversation today, and you'll hear from some of the other folks involved, you'll be able to hopefully participate more. And I'm sure many of you on the call are actually doing something as part of this now. But some of you may not be, and some of you may be looking for opportunities to get involved. And I think you'll start to hear more about that. And I think the last word that I'll say before turning it over to Ben is that you've seen on the screen right now a safety and support notice. And just to remember that whenever you talk about suicide, or whenever you talk about something that's really traumatic, it can echo with people, and it can regenerate old fears or new fears or really strong reactions. And just to know that It's a regular practice for those of us that work in this area to make sure that you've got that support right now. So if there's something that you're feeling that you want to get off your chest, or you want to be able to talk more about, you've got a couple of resources there, and you can actually use the chat box on today. So I think that's all I'll say. It's a privilege to be here with you all and to see so many people interested in this topic. And Ben, I'm gonna turn it back over to you to maybe introduce some of the things that we've been working on.
Thanks, Tim. We're really grateful today to have some incredible speakers with us and to be able to share some really important work. We're going to hear about an environmental scan, talking about responding to events that are traumatic. We're going to hear about the planning that we're going to do to move this work forward with the scan. We wanted to bring our community together. We wanted to bring you all together to hear your thoughts on this as well, to get information from you on how we can build this together. And we really genuinely want to appeal to you to please be a part of this work as we move forward. We're truly stronger together. The only way that we're going to be able to better respond is if we do this as one, a community of communities. And so we're going to hear about this work. We're going to hear about the scan, how we're going to look to proceed this work, and we want to do it with you. So there's going to be information and invitation through today's event to join us for future planning about other possible solutions to filling these gaps. So this is on the 5-step journey. We're about step 2, step 3 to building this, and we want to do it together. So please join us in that. So in addition to Algonquin's presentation, much of the analysis in this report will help to inform our work. And the report for that is available at suicidepreventionottawa.ca. Some other great information there about Postvention as well, and how to get involved in that as well. And just echoing just one final time what Tim said is there's no better day than today to get connected, to chat with someone. Today is about honoring people that we've lost. It's about honoring ourselves with everything we've been through in that loss, and start with reaching out today if that's something that would be beneficial to you. So Renee and Nikki are here, and the chat function can be used for that. So without further delay, I'd like to pass it over to our colleagues and friends at Algonquin, particularly Deanna McGlinchey, who's going to take us through some of the work. Deanna, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Just queuing out my presentation. Slideshow. Oh no, I have notes on the side that I won't be able to access while I'm doing full screen. Oh no. Okay, so I'll have to just see if I can remember what I typed as notes. Good morning, everyone. My name is Diana. I'm the research manager at the Victimology Research Center at Algonquin College. So we do applied research in the area of survivors of trauma, their resilience, and the well-being of service providers. I'd like to acknowledge the hard work of our team of students who helped put this report together. So we had 4 students from Carleton U, 1 from Algonquin College that did the writing of the report, and then the design work of the final report that is on the website was an Algonquin student. And then we had additional supervision in addition to myself by Dr. Benjamin Roebuck and Dr. Carmen Hoost, both who have extensive backgrounds in community mental health. And our team also respectfully acknowledges that this work was completed on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. So just for a bit of background, CMHA provides postvention for community members who have been bereaved by suicide. But in recent years, they've had an increase in calls for other types of postvention support. So they reached out to us, the Victimology Research Center, knowing that we do applied research to increase capacity for services that support victims and survivors. So together we collaborated on a research question asking, could CMHA Ottawa's expertise in postvention be more broadly applied to meet community needs? And just to provide some context, research shows that the average death by suicide leaves behind between 5 and 10 survivors, and this doesn't include the countless numbers of other colleagues, classmates, and extended family members. And postvention begins with a short-term approach to deal with the immediate aftermath, and then ideally transitions into a long-term plan to deal with the realities of becoming a survivor. When we look at the grief for suicide survivors compared to other tragic death, the grief can be quite similar in terms of the immediate emotional response. However, there can be some differences due to the suddenness, shame, and stigma that are associated with suicide. So we collaborated together to develop an online survey. It was 10 questions, which was a combination of closed and open-ended questions asking community members working in the field what they knew about current postvention services, any gaps that they could see or barriers, as well as both the benefits and potential challenges of postvention. For the online survey, we received 66 responses. And then we also held a focus group with members of PINS. I think there were approximately 30 people in the focus group, and we expanded on the questions from the survey in a more of a conversational approach. So we designed those questions around the 3 themes of existing programs, areas that could be improved, and then what they'd like to see potentially in future postvention programs. In the survey, this is kind of a snapshot of who we heard from. So we had a good response rate from all different sectors. So yeah, I can leave that on the screen for a sec to get a sense of who we heard from, but I won't dwell on that too much. And in terms of what benefits folks recognized, we broke them down into 5 key areas. So for education and awareness, folks told us that it would, raised awareness of the services that are available and also educated people about where they could find more support. People also talked about how community engagement worked to reduce things like stigma, and it also provided validation to people to see other folks who were experiencing the same type of traumatic aftermath that they were. It also provides an opportunity to seek mental health care, both from professionals in the postvention service and also from other community members, again, tying back into that community engagement. It was also noted that postvention could prevent future suicides by addressing early on concerns that could develop into something further and providing support to survivors as they worked through their grief. And one of our survey respondents said, it's important for people to have a safe place to mentally and emotionally process the tragic loss and have someone qualified to guide them through the debrief and grief journey. In terms of challenges or gaps that exist, we found 3 broad categories, and these are broken down quite a bit more in our reports, but I'll just go over them quite quickly here. So in terms of accessibility and awareness, lots of folks weren't aware or felt that potential service users weren't aware of what was available. And when things are available, there's accessibility, we found 2 different areas. One, in terms of financial, there is not a lot of free or low cost services. So folks found that being unable to afford service was a barrier, as well as language and cultural barriers, noting that a lot of the services, especially in the Ottawa area, are geared more from a white Western perspective, and there are less available in other languages or with other cultural sensitivities. In terms of the model of care, what we heard here was that a lot of current responses can be pathologizing, and what folks meant by that was that there's some, like, grief is approached from a medical perspective, which doesn't necessarily reflect the needs that some folks have. Also, other things we heard in terms of model of care relate to outsiders coming in to provide this service. If folks from the community aren't embedded within the postvention model, it can seem like an outsider is coming in and kind of dictating the way forward rather than feeling like you're part of the community when you're providing it. And in terms of limited capacity, folks told us that there's currently a long wait list for support, especially tying back into the accessibility, the wait list for free or low cost options, as well as limited capacity to support survivors long term. So postvention being kind of a short-term immediate support, and then when people aren't necessarily ready to move on from that, but there isn't maybe someone who can take over and provide support long-term. And one of our survey respondents told us many mainstream organizations are not equipped to provide services to non-white clientele. They lack diversity in their staffing and management. Additionally, are further harming vulnerable community members due to their lack of anti-racism and anti-oppressive lens. We heard a lot of recommendations from participants, and we really expand on these in our report. In terms of accessibility and awareness, like I mentioned previously, financial accessibility was a big concern for folks. So offering free or low cost options and also service capacity. So reducing the wait lists and the gaps so that more folks can be supported at any given time. And also education in terms of letting communities know what services are available. We heard a lot about community-led programs, so building on community and support that is already there and fostering their internal growth rather than starting a whole new program, as well as including folks with lived experience from the community to help develop the programs. We talked a bit about the use of group support versus the use of individual support, noting that there are positives to both. So group programming allows for the community to build solidarity and to validate their feelings, and also to kind of break down the stigma of reaching out for help. But also it's important to remember the importance of individual support to respond to individual or less common needs that individuals might have that they might not want to share with a larger group. And we also recognize that some individuals are ready for support at different times. So the timing of that assistance and support is important. And also recognizing that some folks value the privacy that group support doesn't provide. So kind of finding a balance between the two is one of the recommendations that our participants told us. We also heard from folks about their suggestions in terms of outreach. So service providers in advance should have a network in place so that they are aware of what other services are offered. In the survey, we asked what folks were aware of, and a lot of folks were only aware of the ones in their immediate network, like their own EAP or their own like local community resources. So it's helpful to have a network so that when you go in to provide support, you're able to connect folks with other resources they might benefit from. It was also recommended that Postvention teams reach out directly to affected communities rather than waiting to be contacted, again, because affected communities might not be aware of what's available. They also talked about the importance of specific outreach to communities who might be hesitant to reach out, especially the two that we heard the most about were Indigenous communities who might not be aware or might not feel like those spaces are meant or able to help them, and also seniors who might just not be as well connected with what's available, like on the internet or things like that. In terms of prevention, participants recommended that response in the community be immediate. So as soon as there's the notice of the tragic death, provide support immediately. And then for staff who are affected, make sure that it's free or available at very low cost. We heard that in terms of like staff in an organization who might experience the tragic death of a colleague or a client, and them being unable to access support because they don't have access to EAP if they're not a full-time staff. So those were two things in terms of prevention. In terms of training and service quality, it was recommended that there be equity across regions. So what we heard was even across Ottawa, with each separate community resource center having slightly different accessibility, and just making sure that everyone has access to the services they need, regardless of where they live, if they're rural or if they're urban, or if they're outside of certain city limits. Also, the importance of having trauma-informed training and improving response quality so that responses are adequate to the community that's being responded to, and that any new services are incorporating those principles of EDI and making sure that all community members feel like this is somewhere they can go for support. And that ties into the next recommendation of culturally and socially inclusive, and just making sure that any program that is developed has that inclusive practice and inclusive design, including using the voices of marginalized communities and folks with lived experience. And then our team at the VRC also had some recommendations. including a formal evaluation of the current program that is being used right now, integration of trauma-informed care and making sure that that's used from day one and all the way through. And then also consideration of equity, diversity, and inclusion in terms of creating the response team and all of the materials that might be used to make sure that folks feel like their voice is represented in the response. And just a quick note on some of the limitations of our environmental scan. This was very Ottawa specific, so it may not be, it could be replicated in other cities, but what we heard is specific to the Ottawa area. Survey responses were not required, so some folks did skip questions, and even the ones that had an answer, they weren't very nuanced. Some of them were maybe only 1 or 2 lines or point form. And we only had one focus group. And as I said, there were 30 people, but I think most of the ideas that were brought forward were from maybe about 6 folks. So, you know, it was that one focus group with just that limited engagement. I have some references on here, and then I'm not sure if there's time for questions now, but you can always contact myself or Ben Roebuck, who's the chair of our research center. Also, the copy of these slides is hyperlinked in the report that's available online, so you can always come back to these if you'd like to. And that's it from me. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I will hand it over to the next presenters.
Thank you. I'm Renée Ouimet. I'm worked at CMHA Ottawa for over 30 years, and I'm now retired as a director emeritus there in 2018. But I've continued to conduct training in suicide awareness and mental health in the workplace, and I'm still a member of the post-suicide support team, which has been going for over 33 years. And with Tracy Foster, who's going to talk to you after me, we have been training new supporters, which means people who are part of the teams for the post-suicide support team. Yeah, well, I was the coordinator of the Ottawa Suicide Prevention Coalition and coordinated the activities of the post-suicide support team, oh boy, from 1997 to 2018. It makes me feel old. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of history around the team and how it came about. And it, as Tim alluded to, we started talking about this in the late 80s. So this has been going on for a while, that Ottawa has very much been doing and developing programs for suicide prevention in Ottawa. And in the early 90s, the Ottawa Public Health took the lead in conducting, well, an environmental scan similar to the one that we're looking at now. Ascertain really what the needs were in Ottawa for suicide prevention. Then there was a group called RISP, the Regional Interagency Suicide Prevention Program, that was coming out of Ottawa Public Health, that brought together, oh my gosh, many organizations to start looking at gaps in suicide prevention. And one of them was definitely the results of this research was that we needed something in post-suicide support. And there was a group, a working group that was composed of 13 organizations then that was created to really look at how we could develop a program. And this was the creation of at the time, the post-suicide debriefing team that then became the post-suicide support team. So the suicide prevention mandate was discontinued with public health, Ottawa Public Health, but continued funding via the city. And there was a call for proposals, and the Distress Center of Ottawa and CMHA Ottawa discussed applying. And CMHA did apply and took the lead. The Distress Center really continued and continues to be an important partner. CMHA receives funding, it took over the coordination of risk, which was renamed the Ottawa Suicide Prevention Coalition. And now we have Suicide Prevention Ottawa to continue this important work. The coalition oversaw the coordination of the team, which was housed at CMHA and still is housed at CMHA. And CMHA oversees the team, responds to requests, trains supporters to this day. The program was reviewed in 2016 by the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, their Ottawa office at the time. Training of supporters was revised in 2016 by myself and Tracy Foster, and again in 2020 as a virtual experience now. So Tracy Foster and I continue to conduct this training. We'll be training new supporters very soon. Thank you. Tracy.
Thanks so much, Renee. And we're really pleased to have an opportunity to tell you just a little bit about the work of the team, but also, as Renee said, with the hope that we actually inspire you to consider joining us as a member of the team. I'm going to just put one slide so you have something else to focus on other than perhaps kind of looking at me. So as Renee said, we've had a number of years to experience this team and the work of this team and the support that we've been able to provide multiple groups and community members over the past years. When I think about the model that we've used for the last 30 years, it really strikes me as being a model that learns continually from the experiences of survivors. And you'll remember from Diana's presentation, there are some distinct characteristics of survivors that need to be understood and accommodated. So if I had to say in a nutshell, the approach that we actually use in terms of our postvention support model, it's really about group process that's designed to foster group cohesion. And so a critical piece of how we actually deliver a session is really seeing it as a facilitated discussion that's guided by the needs, the priorities, the inputs of community members, of group members. At the same time, though, it also has the potential to connect participants to other community supports that might be needed. So it's that balance of responding and customizing the approach to the actual group that we're working with, at the same time as recognizing the importance of offering and then linking and connecting people to available resources that are in our community. I was struck by the comment or the quote that Diana had included in her presentation about folks identifying the importance of having a safe place to mentally and emotionally process with a qualified set of individuals to sort of guide the process. And so when I read that, that fit very much my sense of our team and the way that it has operated in recent years. We have the capacity to offer psychosocial support kind of as an add-on to a support session and to provide follow-up for individuals. The other thing, and you'll hear a little bit more about this in a few minutes, but is also recognizing the importance of the intake role that Canadian Mental Health Association plays, so that every request goes through an intake process that allows a customization of the support that's most relevant and most appropriate for the community that reaches out to us, given the particular kind of loss and the circumstances and context of the loss that they've experienced. Some of the strengths, I think, of the particular model that we use is that it is consistent with some of the more recent advances in psychotraumatology, and is very clear about the need not to pathologize. So you remember Diana talked about community members having a fear that reactions and responses would be pathologized. it also recognizes that some of the acute symptoms or reactions we see in the individuals do not usually predict later adjustment issues. So we recognize that sort of immediate response for what it is, and really support people with that kind of making sense, making meaning, and then linking them to resources kind of as required. And finally, it sort of also recognizes that some of those early reactions actually have adaptive functions, right? So they are serving a purpose, and that they're part of the kind of making sense, making meaning, and ultimately the healing process that people might kind of need to go through. And it also is consistent with some of the research, for example, that's been coming out of the UK from the National Institution of Health and Care Excellence, really talks about the importance of peer support, about really kind of, strengthening and kind of bolstering that capacity for peers to both give and receive support from each other. The importance of it being facilitated by folks who've been trained and who have that trauma-informed lens and some kind of mental health or community resource sort of background and training. And that really is delivered in a way that sort of reduces rather than kind of exacerbates symptoms, and that provision of information and helping access to services is a critical part of the success. Absolutely from the scan, and it's something that we've realized over the years ourselves, is that as much as possible, we believe that the post-suicide support team needs to reflect our community in all of its beauty and all of its diversity. So I think I'm going to end my piece with, a call to action for any of you who really want to help us continually shape, improve, and adapt this model that we've got. We would welcome you to express your interest in being part of the team going forward. And I have the pleasure of handing over to our next colleague, to Abdi Rahman.
Thank you very much, Tracy, and good morning, everybody. I hope you guys can hear me. My name is Abdurrahman Hussein, and I am the Community Safety Engagement Coordinator for the Rita Rockcliffe Community Resource Center. And I'm here in the capacity of being also the coordinator for the PINS network. So the presentation that I'm going to be presenting will be briefly about PINS, and PINS stands for the Post-Incident Neighborhood Support. So just briefly about PINS. PINS is or the Post-Incident Neighborhood Support is a framework that is community-based, and the purpose and the objective is really to lead or to facilitate a community-based post-incident response in various neighborhoods across the city of Ottawa, and to provide support after a traumatic incident has taken place. Now, initially at the onset of how PINS began, it really began in one neighborhood within the city of Ottawa, and it was primarily to deal with street violence. However, over the years, we see that the PINS network really expanded across the entire city of Ottawa, and it's become a project that's now being funded by Crime Prevention Ottawa as well. And it's evolved now to really respond to all types of violent incidents, major police interventions, as well as traumatic incidents, suicides, and major traumatic events, whether it's fires or storms. So the PINS network is now really working in responding to all of those incidents that happened after the incidents have taken place. And really the PINS network and the responsibility of what the PINS network tries to tap into and do is, number one, coordinate support and resources that are available by first and foremost engaging the community leaders, right? So the purpose really of it is to be community driven, so it doesn't feel like it's something that is coming from outside in, but rather the community itself is driving that support for the community after a traumatic event, mobilizing the other networks that are also working in the community and supporting the community to work together, address the concerns, address the needs, see how support can be provided for the community, and potentially also engage and facilitate discussions within the community and share information. So really if we talk about how PINS works in action, it's after a traumatic event that happens in a particular area. The goal is to bring the community together, right? To bring a community together in a way, whether it's a memorial, it could be a debrief, it could be even a resource fair, right? Resource fairs are where different members, different stakeholders that provide services for the community are brought together to help the community know that there are services that are readily available to support and to help them in a way that is helpful to them. And PINS is unique in a sense where it's tailor-made to different communities, right? Not every community, not every neighborhood is the same. So we ensure that the responses are tailored to that particular community, which is why it's very important to really engage with the community leaders that are in the community, that know the community, to the partners that are also involved in those communities. So in discussion of our partners, for example, we have over 13 community health and resource centers that actively engage PINS in their catchment areas. And if it happens to be, for example, in areas that are Ottawa community housing areas, then OCH would take the lead in doing a PINS response, and we would provide whatever support is needed for the PINS response in that particular area. And we prepared a report. I mean, it's been 10 years now since the PINS network has started. So we have a report that I'll be granting you guys access to. It's on our website, where you guys can go through and look at it, and also reach out to me in our center if you want to have more information about the post-incident neighborhood support. And we also offer trainings for communities, organizations that want to be a part of the PINS network. So if you're interested in that as well, please feel free to reach out to me, and my contact will be available. And I'll make sure that also everybody gets access to see the PINS report that has been prepared for the 10-year anniversary of PINS. So again, I want to thank everybody who's here today, who gave me the time to present PINS. And I'll pass it on to the next speaker after me. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Helen Gottfried Unruh. I work for CMHA. I'm Director of Clinical Services, but I also coordinate the post-suicide support team, along with my lovely colleague, Nikki Swenson-Hewitt, who is one of the supporters today. So, we also have added a new person who is going to be doing intake. So we're going to add her name to the list of how to contact us. Her name is Donna Sheehan. So right now we have a very low access threshold to access, because we do the intakes for the post-suicide support team. It's very, very low barrier. So right now you can email us directly. You can leave us a message on our voicemail. You can leave it on the general voicemail or email at CMHA. It's all on our website. And if you Google post-suicide support team, the information will come up also for you. And we usually are able to respond to a request within 24 to 48 hours. That means we've phoned the person back and we've done the intake. So when we're doing that, we remind people that it's not an emergency service. So, at that time we will do some triaging. If somebody needs immediate service, because they're very much in crisis, we definitely direct them to the services that they will need. So we do a lot of service navigation and systems navigation. We generally provide the actual support session within about 2 weeks, a week to 2 weeks from the actual suicide. Sometimes people want to wait a little bit longer. Sometimes they want it a little sooner. We try to be as responsive as possible. So right now we have the capacity to do the service, like the actual support sessions in English and in French. And what we try to do right now is we rely on the expertise of our 29 supporters that we have. So we try to be culturally appropriate. If we have a request from a specific cultural group, we look for people within the scope of our team, and we try to accommodate that way. And what we've been doing, we have the capacity to obviously do the sessions in person. We also have the capacity to do virtual sessions. And we always provide support to our supporters. So once we actually go out and do the actual session, we will do some debriefing with our supporters. We will make sure that we're getting feedback from the actual people that we did the session for. We spend a lot of time and effort on training. So we've regularly hired the lovely Renee and the lovely Tracy to do ongoing training. We also do tune-up sessions for staff who are part of the team to make sure that their skills are being kept very current. And we reach out to people and we find out, if there's some areas that they feel like they would need more skills teaching to, and we try to be as responsive to that team as possible. We've regularly, as Renee and Tracy indicated, we've regularly updated our training. We look to validate whether or not we're still using evidence-based practices. We spend a lot of time looking at adding new material to the training, and we try to keep it as current as possible. So the reason that we basically started looking at this model and adjusting the model to respond to other types of trauma in the community is really because over the last I would say last number of years, we really have been getting an increase in calls for events that have not been suicide. So there's been violent deaths, and more recently a lot of overdose deaths, and we've always had requests for non-fatal mental health crises. So we really were worried about the fact that, as we reached out, every time we get a request, we reach out to people that are networks in the community. We try to look for ways to respond to the need. And what we found, and especially most recently, because we've had a real influx in calls. So generally we're getting about maybe a year, 5 to 7 calls for actual post-suicide support team interventions. But we probably get maybe about 20 calls, sometimes more, for events that are outside of that mandate. And so we really thought we need to come up with something. Every time we reach out into the community, we find that different agencies can do portions of intervention, but nobody's clear mandate is to go out and do what the post-suicide support team does for traumatic events. So we thought, okay, well, let's really take a look at the model that we've been using. And we really thought, let's see if it's something that we can add to, revise, and change to help us respond to these requests. And we hired Renee and Tracy, who are consultants, but they're also founding members of the post-suicide support team. So we decided that we would get them to look at the research surrounding how one should be really looking at traumatic events in a community. what we did find was that this model is, it looks like it's going to be very responsive to what we need. And what we've decided to do is to do some recruiting, do some cross training with some of our existing team. And we're really hoping to pilot it and to see if the model that we are using currently for the post-suicide support team will work adequately for these requests that we've been receiving. So we decided we would create this new entity, and we would really just try to see if if it worked. And this is why we then engaged the team at Algonquin to really look at, are we missing something? Are we doing enough linking? Are we, making sure that there's nobody out there that can actually, has this as their mandate already? And I really, really urge you to look at that environmental scan. It's excellent. And what we found, so Deanna was able to really outline for us and for us today that there are 3 categories of recommendations, of which they also subgroup them to about 8. So for a really brief overview today, all we're looking at is the things that we are currently doing with the post-suicide support team, which we're hoping to replicate in with the new entity. So we're basically, we're free. So it's a service that we have provided free. We don't have a wait list. We have, we've always had flexible hours, so we can do support sessions in the evening. We can do them on weekends. We can do them during the day to meet the needs of the people that are participating. There's a very quick turnaround. Like I said, we usually are able to respond to people within the 24-hour mark, sometimes 48 hours if it goes to the general voicemail or email before it gets directly to Nikki or myself. And we currently recruit professionals from all types of community agencies that have kind of a mental health background, a health background, a counseling background. One thing that we've always done is we've always networked before we actually set up a session. So I will reach out to people in the community, make sure that it isn't more appropriate for somebody else to be doing the session. And we look at also notifying people in the community if we know that we are doing a session, if something's happened in the community where people might be reaching out in a certain area for support. So we'll go to the community health centers, we'll talk to the distress center, we'll talk to anybody that we think is appropriate, YSB or such, depending on the age range of the sometimes it's senior services that we'll have to reach out to make sure that there are supports in the community after the session. And what we've always done sessions within sessions. So we don't, when we do a session for, say, like an agency like CMHA, we would do the staff separately from the managers, and we would do, say, the clients that were affected by the suicide, we would do them separate. Everybody has their own specific needs and has their own specific culture. So we really want to make sure that people are able to really express themselves fully and get the support that they need within the scope of the sessions. We also have always been, when we're looking at individuals, we look to see if there's somebody at a higher risk, and then we talk to people about then making sure that we link them up to somebody who's the person who set up the session, so that they can do the follow-up and making sure that they reach the resources that we've set up for them. And we make sure that they have somebody that they're connected to that knows what's going on. We also find that we spend a lot of time on this very formal training. We make sure that people are really, really prepared to go into a situation. We spend a lot of time briefing people before they go in and debriefing people after they go in, to do like once they've completed the session, and we get feedback from them. We get feedback from the people that have received the service. Some of the other things that we're doing at CMHA is we're reaching out to Indigenous agencies, looking at trying to really build alliances and trying to look at building some cultural competence in return for sharing mental health services. We've also spent a lot of time where, we have been working with intentional peer supporters. So we understand the concept of intentional peer support. We have BIPOC committees set up currently within CMHA, and we use they're comprised of clients and managers and like community folks, and we really rely on them to help inform what we do. We also have an advisory committee made up of peers, and so we have the capacity to run ideas and concepts like this past them, so that we can make sure that we're in line with what we should really be doing. The things we do need help with are: we need more volunteers, and we need volunteers from different sectors. We need volunteers with different experiences, different religious backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, and different language capacity. So if there's one thing that you can do is tell a friend or volunteer yourself. We do need access to peer support in developing peer support in this context. We would like to be able to enhance the individual support experience for people also. We'd like to also be able to work with rural communities. We have the capacity to do that because we're doing things virtually. We need to build in advocacy services into the system to help with public, education and navigation of supports. We need help hosting info sessions to local organizations to foster collaboration, because we'd like to build more alliances. We need help with inclusivity practices. We need volunteers from different cultural groups who speak different languages, who approach grieving differently, and we need to develop a more collaborative approach to grieving rather than the more traditional kind of Western approach to grieving. And that's really it. I mean, if there's any questions or anything you'd like, us to expand upon, feel free to contact me directly, or Nikki, or Andrea.
Thank you.
So
Helen.
thanks for today.
Thanks, Helen. And so we have a question just in the comments about how do we volunteer. So we'll take, just for sake of time, we'll take that offline and make sure that information is put in the chat, and also make sure that information gets back to all. So we really appreciate that. And then for sake of time, we're squeezing over. Tim, I believe you did have some things. So those who are able to stay on, wonderful and appreciated. We had so much stuff to pack in there, but we'll do a few questions now and then wrap up for sake of time. And please stay with us while you can. Thanks, everyone. Over to you, Tim.
Thanks, Ben. We'll stay on for a few more minutes, but if you raise your hand or put it in the chat, we'll do our best to have a bit of a discussion. As you can see, this is a community response, so it really depends on everybody who's on this call who's interested in getting engaged in helping us do this. Any questions, or just unmute and talk? Stephen?
All right, thank you. Yeah, so my question is, I know that, I'm sorry, just the last, Helen, sorry. Helen was talking about trying to find more services to deal with grief that's not suicide related. I work as a peer support worker with Options Bytown. I also, along with my colleague, I'm not sure if she's still on the Zoom meeting. We have we get a group of the resident leaders from different OCH buildings in Ward 13 together, and there's been a lot of deaths in our area lately, and they haven't been suicides. They've been, again, just health related, COVID related, a lot of, some overdose related. But there's a lot of grief in the community, and they're looking for some support and some resources. And what I've been finding, along with some other people, is that it's really hard to find somebody to be able to come and talk to our group about that. So, I mean, if you guys are working on that, I'd love to reach out to you to see if maybe we can do something together. So is there somebody that I can contact about that?
Yes, I'll make sure that you have it's Andrea or myself right now, and we can definitely invite one. We're going to have a meeting, so you're more than welcome to come to that, but we are also willing to come and visit with you and have a meeting with separately also.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so if I can get your information
Sure.
so I can contact you offline afterwards, that would be amazing.
Great.
And then I did put one other question in the chat. One of the deaths that we've had in one of our buildings was there was a doctor assisted death. Doctor assisted suicide. Does the PSST support people for that as part of their mandate?
We honestly, we've not had a request, and we've not actually spoken about that. So that definitely is something to talk about. So yeah, it's not something that we've been posed with at this point.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I think as these sorts of things come up, and there are new ways of applying the things that we've learned, whenever we hit a tremendous loss that's felt by a community of people, that's when we can kind of turn to these sorts of processes. So if we haven't run into it before, raise it, and we'll do the best we can, I think, to respond. Any other questions, folks? Osei?
Yes.
Am I pronouncing that right?
Yes, you are. Thank you. I just want to say thank you to everyone for sharing the program and kind of the initiatives that you guys are doing in the community. I just really wanted to follow up about some of which I guess I'll follow up individually with Helen and Diana about some of the concerns you guys addressed surrounding cultural competence. It sounds more so like cultural literacy and having specific approaches that are catered towards different communities and cultures. And I guess the first step would kind of be discussing what you guys already have in place. That way it's a grand measure of your capacity, and then we can kind of build on that from there. Because again, with services like this, you're going to get only a specific demographic. If that community trust isn't built, and if community members don't know or don't feel as though the services are expansive enough or something that they can identify with or culturally relate to. So looking at, because I know specifically a lot for African, Caribbean communities, Indigenous communities, they all have their own ways of healing and responding to grief and trauma. But it's also important to include some of those aspects in your own approach, especially when it comes to one-on-one care and even working adjacent to certain communities who are already culturally specific, just to ensure that the program can respond to different individuals that you may encounter. So I'm sure that's a conversation for later, but just wanted to share, I'm sure we all have different resources that we could contribute to making sure that the program is expansive as possible, because I think the work you guys are doing is amazing, specifically with postvention services. So maybe that's a place that we can discuss further. Thank you.
That would be great.
Thanks for raising that. I mean, I think we approach this with all humility, you know, and I think it applies to probably most of the services that are available in Ottawa, is that we do the best we can, but we also admit that we're not as competent as we'd like to be. So the more we can learn about other approaches, other beliefs, other response systems, the more we can come together as a community to do this, the better we're going to be. So I'd really welcome that that kind of feedback, that kind of input into how we develop all of our services, to be honest with you.
And our hope is that we would have a lot of volunteers from different communities, so that when a community asks for like a team to come, we can put together a team that is from the community, you know, that are already trusted, that are, you know, and we'll all learn from that, but also to create trust within communities.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good. Agreed.
Thank you for raising that. Other comments? We're coming up to about a quarter past the hour, so we're well into overtime. I'm just wondering if Ben, as the master of ceremonies, you can bring us home on this. I'll turn it back to you.
Sorry, just finding my mute button. I think I'd have it together by now. So just in closing, just want to share heartfelt thank you to everybody for being with us today, from different organizations, different parts of the communities, different parts of our large, vast city. You know, it's really reassuring, and it is genuinely hopeful to see so many people here today, who together we can work together to make a difference. And we have a lot of work to do. We really do. And we could hear today, you know, that there's an opportunity here to take what we have, to take the evidence and put something together to support folks after other tragic events. And I'm really hopeful, and I'm really optimistic that we can make that happen together in a way that's going to make a difference. So from you know, just the conversation today, I've got lots of momentum and energy that we know that there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution. There's not one single organization that can respond, one single group. We really do need to do this together. And I think that's really been solidified today. And so I'm excited for a session that Andrea will be coordinating really soon to bring folks like yourselves together, others together, where we can look at how do we shape this, how do we take the evidence, and how do we take this to the next step. Thank you to all the presenters today for taking the time, all the planners of this event, Andrea, especially for pulling all the pieces together, for CMHA, for helping with all the stuff behind the scenes. Really grateful to work in a community where we have each other's backs, and let's keep this momentum going. And again, just want to share no better day than today to reach out to someone, to chat, see how they're doing, check in for yourself. Be there for each other. We really are better together. So thank you, everybody. Miigwech, and look forward to working together with you all. Be well, everybody.